All right, so I have issues with Timothy Chalamet. I think he's a fine actor. I just don't get some of the appeal. And I don't particularly care for musicals most of the time. So I didn't run out to see Wonka. And I told Mrs. Pops about seeing Wonka, and then she was like, "Oh, yeah, I'd like to see that." I'm like, "Whoa." I was surprised. And then we had mixed reports on how good it is or not. So we waited and we waited. And here we are. And let me give you my thoughts. This will be quick and dirty because it's not as though it changes my opinion of musicals, but it was a fine time. We'll come around to some of the characters as we go along. I have no idea why it jumped till the end, but here he is. He's on his little adventure. He's taken some cocoa beans, we find out later, and here he is. And he does have, I think, a very good sort of demeanor and look about him as Wonka. Like, I think one of the positives for me is that very early on, it had enough of the jovial feel and the song and his movements that I felt like I was in a Gene Wilder Wonka prequel. Like it's all okay. Like I did fine with that. I probably could have used maybe a mannerism or two more, or maybe I didn't pick up on a couple, but it felt okay, if that's any consolation in that regard. And it's basically just that. It's him finally making the dream happen. He has this like mama's boy story about promising mama but making chocolate. And he has sort of like all of these magical elements on how he can do it. And everyone is like has their socks knocked off. In fact, his first introduction, his first is like a floaty one, like so the people float when they take it. So that's kind of how it's introduced. That's the chocolate Wonka bar that his mother made, the final one he's had it this whole time. So that's kind of part of that backstory. Now, okay. The biggest criticism is that we sort of have two elements that I really didn't care for too much. And one of them is sort of like Noodle. Her name is played it's Kala Lane, I think is how you say her name, Kayla Lane. And she's sort of like the girl that's the key to everything. She saves the day. It's like it was a little too much for me. I also didn't find her particularly approachable. She really was not that interesting, but they had good chemistry. This is the magical him making stuff and the over the top stuff. This was actually really good. This type of stuff, it worked really, really well. So, if there's any consolation in that regard, so now they don't do one competitor, they do three competitors. So that's kind of the thing here. Um, and I didn't necessarily really like how all of that was sort of played out, and it kind of got a little overdone in some ways. Um, yeah. Musical dance sequences, though, I mean, there's some great stuff here. And this guy, Keenan Michael Key, plays the police officer, always trying to shuttle him off or whatever. Fantastic. No daydreaming penalty, three. So this kind of stuff works really well. And they do this really weird, contrived. He runs out of money to pay. They have this piece of paper he has to sign as like a loan, and then it's like read the fine print. He doesn't, and it's like this weird sweatshop laundry thing. He meets all these other characters that are trapped there as well. It just seems so. I don't know. It was just a really bad contrived premise for me. Like it wasn't that it doesn't really work. It's just like I just couldn't get there to make it believable for me. I don't know. There was something. I don't know. There's just something missing. But it was their way of having him basically recruit and have this team around him of interesting people, right? So it's like someone who worked as the accountant to Slugsworth and someone who is really good at this and really good at that and that. So it all kind of comes together on their little journey, but it always kind of works from noodles out. So um, the cinematography was great. The musical sequences are fine. I had really good time on the journey. I think he was a fine Wonka prequel. This is the Slugworth. Yeah, I didn't like that at all. Yeah. This is the floaty scene. So parts of this work out fine. I guess everything is just sort of like spiraling and chaotic and work okay. This joke just keeps going, and it is kind of fun. I like both characters. The Keenan Michael Key, this guy on the left, which is or that's Keenan Michael Key. He is really really good. The other police officer is actually really he plays more like the straight man cop, the slate man officer. I believe that is Smith, Holbrook Smith is his name. So anyway, very very good in that regard. So I think all of those elements are fine. Here's this little team that he has put together. Oh yeah, Rowan Atkinson's character was really kind of funny. And this is at the end with them trying to figure out how to get in. They use this giraffe scene. The CGI and stuff on that was not particularly thrilling because they made the giraffe look too clean, too neat. Like it doesn't look like a giraffe. Like it's just a CGI giraffe. Yeah, he steals balloons. He has this morality moment of not stealing, and then literally moments later, he steals someone's balloons. It's really that was kind of like some of the stuff. There's the mom and the flashback and musical numbers. See a little shot. Here's some musical numbers. So you can see some scale. So it works really well. They have some fun little journey. And then we get to the Oompa Loompa played by Hugh Grant. Now, so the thing about this was it shockingly worked. I don't even know how I can explain why I think it works. It felt like he could be an Oompa Loompa. I don't totally get it. It's sort of like really goofy and odd on how they do it, but for some reason, it actually felt fine. It worked. I really wish there was probably a way that the movie ended where he was bringing the other Oompa Loompas into it to save the day, and then he would have Oompa Loompas already at the factory. I don't know if they're going to plan on doing a sequel that would fill in that gap, but like I said, somehow, some way, as bad and weird as this looks in the trailer, it actually was a fun. That was the music, the thing that they do. I like that. It worked. So listen, there's tons of nods and moments and things like that that make it. It's a very satisfactory film. I don't know if Mrs. Possible wants to watch it again or not. I'm not opposed to watching it again, but it's sort of in that 2.5 out of 5 category for me. Maybe a 3 if it's rewatchable enough. It felt a little draggy in the end of the middle act into the final act. And like I said, I don't really care too much about the other people on his little quote team. And the little black girl, just the whole, I don't know. That was the weakest element. It just kind of drug it all down. And this whole thing about the laundry there's a lot of time wasted on how to get out and what they're doing. So it's not a perfect film, but it was at least pleasant and faithful enough to Wonkaverse that I could buy it. And that really mattered more than anything else to me to watch it. So that's my take on it. Maybe some of you have already seen it. I'd love to hear your thoughts. I can now watch other people's reviews because I know some people have already done it. And I kind of heard, you can tell by people's thumbnails what they think. So I didn't really know much about what people said specifically. So I liked this movie, but I didn't like it a lot. Just, it's okay. And it was fun. And that's the thing we were saying. We were like 15, 20 minutes in, I'm having a good time. Half hour to an hour mark. It's okay. I mean, I got little issues here and there. But we were both kind of like having a decent time. So that's kind of what you hope for sometimes. Yeah. Wonka. There it is, folks. Tell us what you guys think. Appreciate it.
Yeah. Right?